Today I will be talking about sustainability and why we as civil engineers should worry about it and what we can do in the U.S. to become more sustainable, especially as civil engineers. Alright, the first is to be sustainable. We know it's the right thing to do, but what is the connection between the ASDE definition of sustainability and the ASDE Code of Ethics? Or what actually connects them and makes it the right thing to do? And I'll give you guys a hint. It's something we learned in kindergarten. It's not shared. Raise your hand if you went to kindergarten. What else did you learn there? I'll just tell you. The golden rule. And do not do unto others as you would not want done unto yourself. If you apply the ASDE definition of sustainability to that, you get this hybrid mutated definition that pretty much goes like this. Do not destroy the environment and use all the natural resources allotted for future generations if you yourself would not want to live in a world where there are no useful resources and the environment is bare. Reason number two. A few weeks ago I was at a lecture in Bucknell, and there was a guy giving a talk about his experiences in the Peace Corps in the Dominican Republic. And what he said was that down there, their definition of sustainability literally means being able to sustain themselves to see the next day. They don't care about future generations or caring about the present. They have no room to even worry about whether they'll have enough resources or not, because they have to make sure they got to watch out for themselves right now. We as civil engineers right now can afford to do it. We don't have to worry about sustaining ourselves. I guess that's kind of questionable with the economy right now, but we don't really have to afford it. We have the opportunity to be more sustainable, so we might as well take it. It's there for our grabbing. Reason number three is that the U.S. currently is the most resource-consuming nation in the world, and this poses a problem because there's a lot of developing countries that are actually following in our footsteps. And the problem with that is that if we have a whole bunch of countries that are the world's most sustainable, not sustainable, most resource-consuming nations, is we'll have a whole conflict. We'll have a lot of conflict, a lot of scarcity of resources, and it'll just become a huge mess. So we have to be a good role model, essentially, in the world right now, because we are still a leader in this global society. Talk about how we can actually be more sustainable, I'm going to reaffirm this with my experiences in Europe this past summer. This is a picture of me flying into Switzerland. It was a course I talked about what we learned about engineering global society perspective. And one of the first things I saw when I landed in Switzerland was something called a Zarski stack. And what this is your weekly trash bag in Zurich. If you want a bigger one, you have to pay for a bigger one. And what this actually does is it promotes people to recycle because recycling is free. And if you recycle, you can fit more of your real waste in the dirty sack. So the city planners knew exactly what they were doing. They actually forced you to recycle because here in the U.S., it's a kind of feel-good thing. You do it because it makes you feel good or warm and fuzzy and stuff. But I've actually seen kids come out of my classroom and throw a bottle in the trash can when the recycling bin is right there. I'm like, really? I've actually been with myself too. What I'm saying is that we civil engineers must push for legislation like this. We're a strong crowd, we have influence, and we must push for these kind of things. In terms of giving choices, the city planners also knew when and when not to give choices. They wouldn't give choices with recycling, but in terms of transportation, the train system there was absolutely awesome. I took this picture in a train station, and it was so easy to use. It was so punctual. It was incredible. And people had cars, but gas was $12 a gallon there, I think back in May of last year, so nobody drove. So they were given choices. You could have a car, you could take the train, and it was just more desirable to take the train. That's what the city planners did. They made it so the more sustainable alternative is always more desirable. But they were still able to, because a lot of people complain that if you get rid of cars, you have no individuality. They still preserve that because people still can have cars if they want. The third thing I noticed in Switzerland was this company called Compo Gas, which was located in a valley, it's like an agricultural valley, and what the farmers would do is they would bring all their organic waste to this Compo Gas facility, and it would be put in an anaerobic digester, and out would come compost and gas, and the company would keep the gas for itself and use that to profit and fuel its own truck fleet, fuel the whole process, and just sell the gas, and give the compost back to the farmers for free. And so it was a zero carbon footprint process. There's no emissions, nothing. It's pretty much an ideal setup down there. And I was absolutely shocked when I went down and saw it. How nicely it's done. So what I'm saying is that today's civil engineers, it's our role to be pioneers and the innovators in the world. We have a lot of control over the infrastructure, and we have to lead ourselves to a better tomorrow. In summary, like I said, in the Zarski Act, we have to push for legislation that controls certain sustainable practices to force people to do them. We also have to offer more sustainable choices. Obviously, a train system isn't always the solution, like in Pennsylvania, or you can't have a train stop at every single house. But we got to work with something. We got to give people choices. And we also need to be innovators and pioneers so we can lead the world to a better tomorrow. Any questions? Yes.
I'm wondering how you think something like the Zarski Act would work in America, because I feel like if you try to limit the amount that people can throw away, it would just increase like littering here. Seems like people wouldn't take that extra step to recycle more.
Well, I don't know why, but this one is so clean. The cleanest country I've ever seen in my life. I think they have really stiff fines for littering and stuff like that. Like, really, so maybe you could impose something like that, but literally, you walk down the street, there's not a single bubblegum splotch or anything. Like, it's perfectly clean. So they must do something. I'm not sure what it is. I can figure that out for you if you really wanted. Any other questions? Yes.
With the legislation, my only thought was, where do you draw the line of what is reasonable and what is unreasonable? Who would make that decision?
I guess that could be up to the civil engineers. It really is just a practical issue. Like, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not quite sure who that'll be up to. I mean, I wouldn't leave it to the politicians to decide that kind of thing. No offense, it never really turns out that well. I was definitely kind of leave it to the citizens themselves to like what they would agree to. I mean, you don't want the citizens to kind of like rebel against your system, whatever it is installed. But my recommendation would be the civil engineers and the citizens themselves to draw the line.
To follow up on that same question, do you believe it's the civil engineer's role to advocate for the infrastructure in Washington and in the local legislature?
I believe it is. Really, I do it. I mean, like I said, if you're one person, you don't have that much influence. If you're all civil engineers in the country already, you're powerful. I mean, you have influence, you have connections, you can do it. We have the power to do it. I really have confidence in that. Yes?
There's no question that we have the power, but should we be using it, I think is more likely the question.
Yes, definitely. For sustainable development, I highly would push for that kind of thing. Oh, that really answers your question. I don't
Well, I think it's not a question of legislation. One of the ways Swiss achieved the transportation aspect is like making sure that the gas stays at $12 a gallon.
I don't know if it's coincidental. It might be coincidental, they might force it to be that high, I'm not sure. But
In the United States, when the price was to fall $4 a gallon, the amount of public transportation in many cities rose close to 33%.
I think people realize they have nowhere to go. Like, they couldn't use their cars.
So realize that economic incentive is probably